Hello, adventurers, and welcome to today's Tavern Tales. I am your host, Scorpion, and you guys may now take a look around. There's some people with some interesting stories being told. I do need to go prepare some meals though, so I'll be back to close this out. You all approach a person. They exclaim, their name is Mario Mastermark, and he has a story. They have a story on the deadly acorn. So, so my first time playing D&D was at a school club. Our last session, we were in a cave looking for villagers, and faced a few goblins, which were weakened. Previously, we had a running joke about a code word of deadly acorn. And seeing how I had an acorn in my pocket, I, a half elf cleric, threw the acorn at the goblin. I rolled a nat 20. Last two rolls were nat 1s, so I drew some luck. And here's how the DM described it. Okay, you see the acorn bounce around the room, hitting all the goblins in the room, and going into the next room. Then, as you hold your hand in the air, the acorn jumps into it, increasing your kill count by 400. Then when we were all in the next room, which had the villagers and hundreds of bat corpses, when the villagers asked what happened, I showed them one bat and the acorn, and the roll a nat 20 on intimidation, leading the villagers to both fear and respect me. Next you will come across a person named Cheese Face First, with a story of the hardest thing I have ever seen a player do. It was the final dungeon. My players have been chasing the villainous scumbag for weeks. From town to town, he's always seemed to be just out of reach, taunting them through programmed illusions, but now he's in there. He's about to find the artifact he's been looking for this whole time. As the party enters the single cave entrance, to the labyrinth ahead of them, the warlock seems to have made up their mind about something, and turns to the rest of their party. Even if we fail here, they say resortly, he cannot be allowed to escape. The rest of the party seems to understand, and they step back, allowing the warlock to do what they need to. The warlock readies himself, then fires off eldritch blasts at the ceiling of the cave's mouth. Shot after shot, the rock begins to become unstable, until finally it comes crashing down, sealing the party inside. That should buy the world a bit off time at least. As a DM, I have never been more proud and more terrified of my players. Afterwards, you approach another person. They say their name is ReKing69, and they're talking about how a player ruined my first D&D campaign by being a rules lawyer. I am a 20-year-old. I love the idea of D&D, as well as any fantasy or make-believe in fiction. That I find interesting and fun. When I learned about D&D, that's what and what you can do in it, I instantly wanted to play it. Only problem was I had no one to play it with. And I was so desperate that I even joined a club at my old high school to play. However, that teacher who ran it didn't tell me how it worked. He just gave me a piece of paper, barely explained how to use it, and said good luck. So I just dropped that. And so for a while, I never got to play D&D, which was sad. However, one day I met some people on VR that were in a role-playing group. I decided to join because it sounded interesting, and I instantly fell in love with it. It was so fun, and eventually then that RP group died. We became a small friend group. I found out that one of all my friends did D&D, so I joined. Then I met the other guy online who does D&D, so I joined them. And after a while, I started doing a bunch of different D&D campaigns. Eventually, I was inspired to do my own. This is where the problematic player showed up. I'll call him Cat. Cake. Cat. He offered to help me since he knew a lot about D&D, and I mean a lot. And I agreed since I'm new to being a DM and didn't have much knowledge on it other than the couple of campaigns I played. At first, everything was fine. He helped me set up the Discord server. He gave me monster sheets and stat blocks. He pitched me ideas using Google Slides to make maps so that way people could see visually instead of me just telling them what's happening and about everything that was going on until there was an immediate problem. He was a warforged, an extremely overpowered warforged. Oh, great. I will take the blame for most of this because at first I saw it was cool, and I was giving my players a lot of freedom to have fun. He was extremely fast, did massive damage, and could attack multiple different teams. And because of that, he was just blowing past anything I put up, and everyone else couldn't exactly really play. I mean, everyone was still having fun. We were joking. I was doing a pretty well describing it, being my first time. But Cat was slowly but surely starting to get more and more controlling. He started complaining about how things didn't work, how that's not how this monster works, it says. You can't do that in the rules. And he was extremely micromanagement about everything I was doing. I tried ignoring it, thinking he was just trying to help, but it was getting more and more annoying. He eventually started talking to players about the idea they had behind my back and didn't tell me about it until the last second, getting them excited, thinking I would say yes, even though I never agreed to it. He was taking over my D&D campaign. He was trying to coax me into telling him about the lore so he could quote-unquote help me better. But I tried my best to ignore it because I was doing this for my friends, and I wanted to have fun. Until during a session when he was complaining again, one of my players yelled out in full volume on the Discord call during the campaign, Cat, shut the f up! When that happened, I immediately knew there was a problem. So I held a meeting, I asked my players what they were thinking, and I told them all my feelings and thoughts, and they agreed, so I pulled him aside and told him so politely as possible that he had to stop and that it was getting annoying. Give me a moment, I am scrolling. And I was just bearing it because I don't want to lose him as a friend. We talked a bit, he agreed to relax, but he did make a snarky comment about me not knowing what I was doing. When we tried it again, he did not stop, he only got worse. In my opinion, it got to the point where I started losing motivation to continue. More importantly, players just weren't showing up for random reasons. I didn't know, and it got to the point where my players wouldn't show up anymore, and I made the announcement asking that if they tell me at a time and date we were be able to play, I could do that. But no one answered. So eventually I just ended the entire thing entirely. And I took a step back from any ideas about being a DM again. Fast forward a couple months, and I started to make a new campaign, which I was working on now. It's not the same one, it's completely different, and it is a blaze off of horror, and this time I know what I'm doing and got my stat blocks from an outside source. That was not Cat. I asked a different friend to help me create a server, and they did I talked to friends I could trust about one of them voicing acting the main bad guy and another one being a secret bad guy. And everyone was super excited. They liked the idea of the horror RP and being monster hunters. Then we sat down and created our characters. They were asking me questions, and I was telling them how things would work and what wouldn't. Everyone got extremely excited for this event. I was excited. I didn't tell Kat about the server in this campaign, but I felt bad leaving him out. So I asked everyone else, should I tell him or should I not? And they all agreed that I shouldn't because otherwise he'll just ruin it again. This isn't this isn't a one-time thing. They've had history of being difficult to play with an RP and D&D. So I made a rule not to tell him. I still kind of felt bad, but at the same time, didn't, I don't, I can't trust him, and it's highly unlikely that I will change my mind to invite him. But if I do for some reason change my mind, either by request from another player, which I doubt, or just by guilt, I will make it extremely clear that if he acts up too many times, he is out. I have some opinions on this. That being, if there's a problematic player, like he did, he brought it up to everyone else, and he got it solved. That's fine. My D&D group, we've had several. I will actually explain one right now. We had a player that we were doing Curse of Strahd, and we all gathered, and we were making our way through the fog, which is like the beginning area of Curse of Strahd. Spoilers, not really. And this DM, he was relatively new to DMing at the time. He asked everyone, "What do you make your characters?" And then one thing that you can have pretty much. And this guy, apparently not liking that idea, decided he wanted to have 2 items: a bag of holding and 1,000 towers of defense, I believe. Let me check. My apologies. It was Instant Fortress, the magic item. And what he wanted to do was use the spell Catapult and just throw him out. That was his main attack. DM and all of us did not really appreciate that. So we told him no. He did not appreciate that and got mad. So he decided to try to take it out on all the other players. My character, a Warforged at the time because I was new, Warforged fighter, walked into the fog ahead of everyone, and the guy decided he was going to throw a dagger, which ended up in my shoulder. And I was like, okay, that's fine, I kind of get it. You don't know what's in the fog and you see something approaching. But he just kept doing things. We made it to the House of Death, which, fun. And we were all having some issues. He was complaining. He was being a rules lawyer. And the DM just went, "Sorry, dude, you're out. We tried talking to you. You're out of here." But we still had his character. So, during the House of Death, we were pretty exhausted. Both in real life for me, because I was working 3rd shift at that time, and I stayed up the day prior to make sure I wasn't late. And our characters, we were, the House of Death is a pretty tough dungeon for a low-level group. And there wasn't many of us at that point, at that time. We lost him, and we lost another person that knocked us down to 3 players, including me. So, me passing out every once in a while would cause it to go down to 2. Well, what happened was I passed out just because of 3rd shift. Yay. Woke up, and I told him, "Hey guys, sorry, passed out. What's happening?" the DM described it, there was some monster some monsters in the death house that were actively zapping the strength characteristic of my group, and that we need to run. I deciding, you know what, this would be a great time to get rid of this paperweight of an NPC because he literally was not doing anything. Decided to take my longsword, I think it was, flip it so I'm holding the blade. There's a certain fighting style when it comes to it. Hold the blade and take the hilt or the pommel and swing it hard enough to break the annoying player, but he's actually an NPC now because we kicked him, breaking his spine, causing him to be paralyzed, and freaking leaving him behind. We rested, came back to see his husk. We also had some other issues. We lost another player later in a different game, but that was just one of my various stories of dealing with a obnoxious player. I'm obviously just paraphrasing. He probably did other things, but that was the gist of it. However, that will conclude today's tale. I do hope you guys all enjoyed. Now, next time, please wipe your feet off the rugs, like the video, subscribe if you guys would like, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye.